Hey guys! Thank you for still watching my videos, for those who are still following. I have been requested to do another top 10 because my last video was the top 10 Tim Burton couples, and that was fun. But someone, and I don't want to pronounce your name wrong, Mary Kate Heaney or Henny or... Anyway, so I apologize if I pronounce it wrong, has sent in the request of my top 10 Tim Burton villains. Now, the first time I read that, I was like, oh, villains, that's interesting, because most of the villains are kind of like split, half and half, like they're not exactly like pure evil, and they're sort of like, you know, half and half where, yeah, they're doing bad things, but you understand, like, why they're doing them, or, you know, they're quite misunderstood, and, you know, and I really enjoy, but at the same time, I really do enjoy the villains, so I thought, yeah, I might as well do a top 10 list, so it might be a little bit all over the place, but to me, these characters are classed as probably antagonists. I wouldn't say villains, but antagonists, so I hope that you enjoy the video. Alright, so before I go on, I would like to say in advance that I'm still recovering from a cold, so that's probably why I look like shit right now. Yeah, so if I cough or, you know, sniff and whatever, I apologize, I'm still recovering. But yeah, this is pretty much the only time I can film this though. Okay, so with that said, okay, right, onto the list. One word for this character. Scare-y. Okay? This character scared me the first time I watched it, and I think, and this is actually what I love about it, and I think this is why I think the performances were the best part, was because, you know, the fact that they've got to be all, you know, half animal and half human, I think it was brilliant, and, you know, I have done that when I was doing acting in drama in school, we were always told to kind of sort of animalize our characters. So, whatever one. So we were kind of like, okay, so if my character was an animal, what would they be? So I really kind of appreciate the performances, and that's why I think they're better than the motion capture that they're doing recently. I have nothing against motion capture, that's absolutely fine. It's just, there's just something about the actors, like, trying to be like these animals, and I think what was great was that they got a lot of the unpredictability, because animals are unpredictable, and so you know, and so that's why he was probably scary, because you just didn't know how he was going to react, and the fact that they managed to, like, I'm talking about all the actors, the fact that they all managed to really communicate through their performance. Personally, I think the performances were the best part. You know, you may disagree with me, but I think the fact that it was scary and very unpredictable, and I think that's why that would be number 10. Alright, so, I know there's technically a main villain in this movie, because obviously we discover them later as the story progresses, but to me, I think the Headless Horseman counts as an antagonist, because, well, he's the one that's chopping off all the heads, and even, like, when you hear his backstory, you know, he's pretty ruthless, and I loved the makeup they did on Christopher Walken. That was brilliant. So I think it's the fact that what I loved about him is that they really got down, and this is pretty much Sleepy Hollow all around, is that they definitely got the atmosphere right down. And the thing about the Headless Horseman is that this is like from the music, the special effects, you know, I'm really thankful that Sleepy Hollow was not in that realm of films in the late 90s that were like saying, oh my god, we're gonna like cram all this CGI, because this is when CGI was getting quite big, and they thought, oh yeah, because it looks real, we're gonna try and make it very no, you need a purpose for all of it to be scary, but Sleepy Hollow did it in very very tiny ways. So just smoke kind of moving around. You can see faces in the fire. Sometimes people miss it, sometimes they don't. Just tiny little things, like really tiny effects, or just, you know, the Headless Horseman coming out of the tree, that looked brilliant, you know, and so they really had the presence there. They weren't just, you know, throwing stuff at you. I never felt like that, and that's what's brilliant about Sleepy Hollow. And the Headless Horseman is definitely a crowning achievement. And again, I think I mentioned this in my Sleepy Hollow review, the fact that I loved that they used, you know, a real actor and it wasn't all CG, and so it sort of felt like when you were watching him, oh, it's like he's really there, he's really doing the actions, he just doesn't have a head. Weird. You know, that's the kind of feeling that you should have, and so I think they did it really well. So it was the atmosphere and the presence of the character. And again, the effects for the head chopping, you know, some people find it funny, I do find it funny, but only because of how good it looks, you know, and how, the fact that, you know, they're real prop heads and, you know, they're animatronics for the body, so, you know, it's like, hardly any CGI, and I loved that. So yeah. Know if people would count the Martians as villains, but because they've tried to destroy our planet, I think that counts. I think that counts. Even if they killed off a lot of the human characters that were jerks, but you know, you just laugh at it. I think it's like one of those, I think it's those characters that, yeah, they're doing horrible things, but we're just laughing at it. And I think that's why I don't take sci-fi movies very seriously, because it's just the whole idea of aliens invading a planet is absurd. So you don't take it seriously. So like movies like, you know, the only sci-fi movie I take seriously is Alien, the first one, because, well, I mean, it had the atmosphere and the, you know, the design of the aliens were brilliant, or the, yeah, the one alien, excuse me. But yeah, and I think the Martians, I think they're just funny, and the fact that they get across a lot of jokes for these characters, and again, they can't speak proper English, and I love that, you know, and I always think that, you know, the best jokes from Tim Burton films is when you just have a kind of reaction from something, or, you know, I usually think that his comedy is very situation comedy. It's kind of like, oh, they end up in this sort of place, and you sort of kind of go, you know, you sort of smile at it, and it's really great. And Mars Attacks is full of that. I mean, there's a lot of comedy from the human characters. I mean, I find that film hilarious. But I think most of the jokes came from the Martians, and, you know, the design of the flying saucers were great, obviously inspired by Ray Harryhausen, Earth vs. Flying Saucers, I believe. And yeah, it was just, they just took you on the fun ride. So, you know, as much as I love the human characters, the Martians, well, they pretty much just stole the show, as we do expect they would. But, you know, even though they were invading a planet, we were just laughing all the way. Okay, so I think I mentioned I put the Red Queen on my favorite supporting characters. I can't remember where. I think she was quite low on the list, I think. But I think she definitely counts as a villain because, well, they're basically pretty much trying to get her off the throne. It's like, move. I think what I love about it, and again, this is what I love about Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, because they were so... the characters were so distinct. They had very different ways of portraying madness, and therefore they were just so much more memorable. They weren't just going, you know, they weren't just... when other versions of Alice, you know, they're always just like, you know, hyper crazy or, you know, like laughing all the time, and it's like, oh, because they have a weird laugh, that means they're crazy. No, it's a little bit more than that, and so that's what I absolutely love about the Alice in Wonderland characters from Tim Burton movies. And the Red Queen, what I love is the fact that, you know, she has that kind of, you know, childish kind of, you know, I want the power, you know, it's like, I'm the eldest, you know, you know, and it's she's basically behaving like a toddler, and that was a sort of a great effect, and so I thought that's like, oh, that kind of makes sense because, you know, she's a ruler, and so she's obsessed with power, you know, toddlers would be like that too, you know, and I love how sometimes her words kind of slur a bit, you know, and it's kind of like, well, that's what toddlers do as well, and so she's very entertaining, and so you just see her like mad with power, and they really got that down. And I love her castle, the way, I know it's all CG, but hey, I love the design of the castle. Well, I love the design of the film overall. It's one of those, like, majority CG films, but they have a point, like, I know why they went that way, you know, and it's great, and so she's just among the mad characters that I enjoy from Wonderland. Oh yeah, I remember. Again, this was after after I watched the first Batman movie, and I looked at the cast list for Batman Returns, and I was about to watch it, and I found out that Danny DeVito was the Penguin, and I was like, perfect. I mean, yeah, that go. I can't imagine anyone else doing it. You know, and I think what I loved about it is, I had seen sort of like sketches from the comic. I think I might try and find one. Hang on. So I've seen, like, you know, images of the Penguin from like the comics and the Adam West show. And while I for this, I don't know if you can see it very well, but you know, while I do like the design as well, it kind of looked penguin-y, but that's just because of the tuxedo. But what I love about the way they sort of transformed the Penguin is that it sort of felt a bit more penguin with his flippers instead of hands. It looked a bit more penguin-y to me, and a little bit more deformed and a little bit more grotesque. And because he's the villain, that makes a little bit more sense. And so the design, Stan Winston, great. Well, you always do great work. And you know, and I think what I love about the Penguin is he's one of those villains where, you know, you kind of understand a little bit more of his backstory and where he's going, and even when he's at his most, like, and then sometimes you hate him for what he's doing, because he's just going out of his fucking mind, and so, you know, and then suddenly, like, you know, you feel sorry for him again, and it's kind of like, oh, you know, you keep going back and forth, and I love villains that do that. And the Penguin, again, I think the fact that they made Batman Returns at Christmas time and it was snowing, it sort of adds to that kind of icy cold feeling of the Penguin. Again, I'm probably repeating myself from all my reviews now, but, you know, that's what I get. Danny DeVito, your voice. I loved your voice in it as well, and some of the jokes that they did with the Penguin. Oh my god. I'm trying to think about one joke that had me laughing on the floor. I can't remember, but sometimes, like, he would do something, and I don't think it was intentionally funny, or maybe it was, but yeah, I just ended up laughing a lot, and so he just made it part of the fun as well. I think he was mainly the fun part, not exactly the comic relief, but at the same time, you do feel sorry for him at some moments, and so I think that's point worthy. Yeah, people are really gonna get mad if I don't put this character on, but to be honest, I would go mad if no one put this character on either. Let's face it, everyone loves Oogie Boogie, and I think it's that song. It is that song. It's one of my favorite songs from the soundtrack, and still remember when Danny Elfman performed it, and again, I'm probably repeating myself, and you know, the Oogie Boogie song came on, and, you know, we heard the introduction, and everyone was like, yes! We love that song! And so, Danny Elfman did a great job doing the Oogie Boogie. But I think it's just, I loved the added characteristic that, you know, he's a gambler, and, you know, he's funny, and that he's made of bugs, and, you know, a very creative character. You know, and so, again, he's one of those villains that we just laugh at, you know, we love to hate. He's got an amazing song. And, you know, I love the stop motion during the song as well. It was brilliant. Well, I love the stop motion overall, but that was, like, one of its shining moments for me. Yeah, definitely. Ooh, we're gonna get dark now. This is, now surprisingly most people will be like, why didn't you put Sweeney Todd on there? Because technically he might be a villain because, you know, he's, you know, slitting throats, and making them into pies. I was on the fence of putting Sweeney Todd on the list, but then I thought, nah, I feel so sorry for him because of what happened in the past, and so I can't, I can't blame him for that. But, like, watching the film again, you know, I was kind of like, yeah, the judge is just despicable. I'm turning into Daffy Duck. You're despicable. So I decided to put the judge and the Beetle as well because I think, you know, I think what Alan Rickman did, and I really loved it. I'm pretty sure he would have taken inspiration from actors such as Vincent Price and Christopher Lee, and the way that you sort of, you know, you're very curious about what he's thinking, but at the same time you don't really want to know everything that's going on in his head because it's a fucked up mind. But you know, and he does that kind of presence about that. You kind of, you know, you just, you know, if I was in that room in the library scene, the way he's like running his fingers down, I was like, whoa, you know, it's like, I love characters like that. It's, you know, you're curious, but you don't want to know everything. Because you're thinking, wow, what a sick mind is that. And the Beetle, Timothy Spall, I could tell he was having fun with this. You know, I love how, you know, he thinks that, you know, he's, you know, a very attractive, appealing man, but, you know, he's just a slimy, horrible, he's a horrible person. But at the same time, I get a few laughs out of him, you know, because of, you know, the fact that he thinks that he's, you know, perfect, and obviously he's not. So these two I really enjoy. And, you know, Alan Rickman and Timothy Spall, you did a great job. Well, I think the entire cast of Sweeney Todd did really well, but, you know, as a villain, I would probably put the judge and the Beetle there. Oh yeah, and people would really get mad if I didn't add this character to the list, but of course I am. The Joker's one of my favorite characters ever. You know, it's oh my goodness, like, I've seen a lot of, you know, versions of the Joker, of course. Being a huge Batman fan, I've, like, watched more versions, but I have to say, I would say Jack Nicholson is my favorite because excuse me. Because I think it was just the way that they wrote the character. The jokes that they gave him seemed like Joker, you know, jokes. You know, the I don't know. It just felt a bit more Jokery, and the sort of, it sort of got me into that feeling of what the Joker is. You know, close second, definitely Heath Ledger. I have nothing against his performance. It's just that as far as the character was written, I think just Jack Nicholson had a little bit more because, you know, it just introduced me to the comics and it made me understand who the Joker was. You know, the fact that he is Batman's opposite. He was bright, he was colorful, you know, he's a clown, you know, and he does clownish things, and, you know, he sort of acts in that way. It's like, hey, see what I can do, you come and catch me, you know, and the jokes they come up from are hilarious, and I just, oh my god, I laughed myself on the floor watching that, you know, and again, I love that, you know, and again, he completely is Batman's opposite in the movie because he shows himself more and Batman still hides in the shadows. Yeah, a lot of people complain, it's like, well, it's called Batman, why don't you show more Batman? But he's hidden in the shadows. You know, he's that kind of character, whereas the Joker is the opposite, and so you would have more screen time with the Joker, and so it just makes more sense, and so he's just so entertaining. Love it, love it, love it. Guys are probably gonna get so tired of me talking about Angelique. I can't now. I really love this character. I think it's because I love watching that kind of, you know, really confident character, and, you know, as soon as they enter the room, man, they have control, and you get that sense when they come in, and And then as the film progresses, she kind of loses a little bit more of that control, and she mentally and physically starts breaking down. And I love that. She becomes a little bit more insane, and you know, and you see that kind of that glare in her eyes, and it's brilliant. Ava Green, you're such an amazing actress. You're one of my favorites. And you know, that small transformation, and you know, it's not like I didn't feel like it was. It didn't feel it suddenly came out of nowhere. No, it was very slow. It was very progressed. You know, sometimes she regained confidence again, like the scene with Barnabas in her office, and then after the love scene, you know, when he says no, I can't have you, and then she has that stare in her eyes again, and I was like, oh, you know, it's like. I love that. I loved her performance. I love the way she's designed. I love the fact that she looks, what was it? Eva Green, I think she described her as somewhat of a Barbie doll. It's kind of like she's sort of wearing a mask throughout the whole thing, and I think that's really interesting because obviously, you know, when you look at her in the prologue, you know, she looks, you know, different, and then, you know, and I love the, you know, her eyes, around her eyes, they get a bit more like dark, and, you know, and she sort of, her hair becomes a little bit messy, and it's like subtle changes. I love it, love it, love it, love it. I love the character. I love the character. I've gone on and on and on. Yeah. Okay, so you're probably thinking, as much as I love Angelique, who would be number one? Well, you might be surprised, but I have thought about it long and hard. But here it is. I looked over the films, I looked over the stories, and to be honest, the main villain in Tim Burton movies is society. And, you know, this is pretty much what makes us relate to these characters, relates to his movies. Because the way society treated our heroes, or, you know, main characters, and the outcomes of what happens. You know, even with some of the villains, you know, like Walter Keane, for example, in Big Eyes, you know, the fact that society sort of, you know, had that misunderstanding and therefore the lie began, or the fact that, you know, they made the paintings very popular, that made him, you know, very drunk with power, shall we say, and sort of, you know, keep wanting more and more. Yeah, I mean, he is a total he's a total asshole, but at the same time, you know, I do sort of blame society for what made him become who he was. Or if we look at something like Frankenweenie, the idea of competition, or the fact that the neighbors are scared of what science is, you know, they're scared of looking beyond what science is, and that competitiveness, you know, creates the monsters that, and then therefore runs amok around the neighborhood, you know. Alice in Wonderland, the fact that, you know, her family and her friends of the family, you know, they all have a bit of a connection to each character in the movie, and that's what sends her down this dream, and that's why it's a little bit darker, you know, and the fact that they expect things from her, but at the same time they still treat her as a child, you know, and that's what makes her go on this journey. Well, it was worth it in the end, but, you know. You know, Sweeney Todd, society pretty much made him as mad as he is. I keep going on and on and on. Ed Wood, the fact that, you know, the studios are never giving him a chance, you know, you get so wrapped up in his passion, but because no one is responding positively to his movies, yes, he does keep himself up, but at the same time, you know, he does have his moments where he's sort of questioning himself. You know, even in the first 5 minutes, he starts questioning himself, have I made the right decision of where I'm going to go? And sort of questions, well, look at what Orson Welles has done. And so, you know, and the idea of society keep pushing him. I keep going down, down, down. Okay, and of course, Edward Scissorhands. I mean, yes, Jim would be like the main villain of the film, but to me, I think the main villain is society. The way that, you know, they suddenly turn on him at the end and everything just gets worse and worse and worse, and you think, and, you know, as I'm watching the film, I'm thinking, oh my god, you know, and My friend Maddie, who finally got the we did a pact where we said we'd watch each other's favorite films. And hers was Prince of Egypt. So glad I saw that. Thank you, Maddie. Loved the movie. And then she watched Edward Scissorhands and she loved it, I think. And well, yeah, she said she really enjoyed it, and the fact that, you know, she says, yeah, why do people treat people like this, you know? And it's that sort of classification, you know. And so I thought long and hard. See, I talked about a bunch of movies. I haven't even gotten through all of them, you know. And so it's like, I think I've shown you plenty of examples. That is why I think society is the main villain in Tim Burton movies. I've rested my case on that. If you would argue with me, sure, who would be your #1 villain? I'd be very keen to know. So, thank you for joining me. Sorry if I went a little bit crazy, but I just wanted to rest my case. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. My next top 10, you'll be, well, hopefully you'll be excited for, is going to be my top 10 guilty pleasures. So that'll be interesting. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!